I think our form of racing is the best form of racing in the world, and the most competitive, which is why I think, Shane Van Gisbergen, who won the Chicago street race, why he's coming to NASCAR next year, because there are opportunities for him to shine in what is, I think, the best series in the world. Super biased, but excited by the level of competition and what we're doing and the schedule variation. A new car that debuted last year, our next gen car that is just having just amazing results on the racetrack, and a young driver corps that is just now, catching its stride, that I think there's significant growth that will happen in the sport for a decade or more.
How's it going, OFPs, and welcome to another episode and special episode of the Off-Field Players Podcast, the only podcast for aspiring sports industry professionals. I'm your host, Philip Hall, and I hope everybody's having an awesome week or weekend by the time you're listening to this. And oh my goodness, everybody, if there wasn't a better way to close out 2023 with the Off-Field Players Podcast, I don't know what is, because tonight, I have a very, very special guest on for another informational interview for the Off-Field Players Podcast. And pretty much this guest, I don't think he even really needs an introduction because he's very well known around the sports world. He's at the commissioner level in NASCAR. And of course, for those that keep up with motorsports or are around the motorsports realm at all, from the OFP perspective, I'm sure you've heard his name before, but I'm very, very blessed to have him on the podcast. And it's been a long time coming. I mean, we've built a relationship for the past few years, as everybody know that with my experience working in NASCAR, being a part of the NASCAR Diversity Internship Program. I mean, just leading up to this moment to interview my guest tonight, I mean, it's an incredible honor. And I'm very happy that, we can share a conversation and be able to expand it to the aspiring OFPs all over the world, as well as the OFPs that are consistent listeners, just here in the United States. But before I go any further, I want to remind everybody to make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video if you're watching the video version on YouTube. And also, if you're listening to the audio version, either on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Radio Public, make sure to leave 5 stars for this episode, and also share the link with anybody that you know that's looking to work in the sports industry, looking to gain motivation from leaders all over the sports industry, and also just finding out a little bit more about other opportunities that come across in the sports industry just from my previous episodes. But without further ado, I don't want to waste any more time. I'm very happy to introduce my guest tonight on the Off-Field Players Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, OFPs, allow me to introduce Mr. Steve Phelps. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing great, Philip. It's great to join you tonight.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, it's an incredible honor to have you on for an interview. And just, knowing me and just how much I've, grown up pretty much with the sport of NASCAR over the years, from being someone that's watched the sport, that has worked in the sport, and continues to follow the sport to this day, and also continuing to, promote the sport to my generation. I mean, it's just definitely great to have you on for an interview. And I know we've worked on this for, the past few months, and just thank you so much for taking the time and helping me close out the 2023 with this episode with you. I'm sure what people are going to hear tonight is definitely going to be motivational and inspirational.
Well, thank you for being such a great brand ambassador for NASCAR, Philip. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just so much has happened in this year alone with NASCAR, and we're going to get into it later on, but just first starting off with NASCAR celebrating 75 years. That's a very long time, the diamond anniversary year for the sport, and just everything that has transpired, like just in 2023 alone. I mean, just from the work that you've done and the work with everybody else that works around the sport, I mean, it's revolutionized the way that NASCAR is now being watched, and also the way that people are keeping up with motorsports these days.
Yeah, it was a special year for us on a lot of different levels. We started back at the LA Coliseum with a Clash, which is an exhibition event that we do. This was our second year. and then right into the Daytona 500 2 weeks later. And the season just got off with a bang. We had a single car team, which was driven by Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who won the Daytona 500. And such a great group of owners there. You have Brad Doherty, who played in the NBA, and
Right.
Tad Geschecter, and one of our newer owners, Gordon, who has kind of jumped onto the scene. So what a special way for us to kick off the year. And the competition was fantastic. We had 15 different winners. We went back to a facility we hadn't raced on in a couple of decades, North Wilkesboro, for our all-star race. And then our first ever street race in our 75-year history at Chicago. And that race was, it was spectacular. It rained 7 inches on Sunday, the day of the race. But other than the biblical rain or 100-year rain, it was just an incredible event. It was won by a guy from New Zealand who had never raced in NASCAR before. He races in Australian supercars. His first race, and he won the race just for track race racing, just spectacular. And then, we had a great playoffs. We have a great winner on our Cup Series side with Ryan Blaney, who's a third-generation racer, just a great guy, and I think he's going to be a tremendous winner for us. And then, some things, I would say off the field, if you will, or off the track, probably nothing more important to the sport than we have 5 media rights partners. So our existing partners, Fox and NBC, and then we've added Nexstar with the CW for the Xfinity race, and then Amazon and Warner Brothers Discovery for kind of this summer series in the middle. So 5 races a piece, plus practice and qualifying for half the season, first for Amazon and then for Warner Brothers Discovery. So it's been an incredible year. Super proud of what our industry has been able to accomplish in our Diamond Anniversary season. And we're really excited to jump back in 24.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a lot to be proud of this year, Steve, with the NASCAR, with how the sport is going, and just even the monumental moments that happen throughout the year. And of course, with me being in a NASCAR diversity internship program over the summer, I was there to see it all, and just seeing how far the sport has come when I started watching it when I was 3 years old, just to now. I mean, it's very incredible just to see, and also, how the sport is adapting to the times that we're living in right now with social media, broadcasting rights where people are now streaming sports on their phones and on their TVs at home, and just knowing that NASCAR is now going to be going into that direction relatively soon, and has already been making marks on the social media side, currently. I mean, it's definitely a great thing to see for sure.
Yeah, we're excited. One other thing that we had a ribbon cutting for a brand new production facility that we will open in January, which is kind of, think about it in 2 parts of the house. One is what happens from, a live event standpoint, and we'll be producing races out of that building. And then something we call NASCAR Studios, which is really, think of it as content that would go across any channel, whether it's social media, kind of short form, or Netflix or Amazon or whatever it might be, where we are going to meet either current NASCAR fans or future NASCAR fans. And we're really excited about that. We have a Netflix show that will be coming out around the end of January that looked at the last 11 races of our season. I saw the trailer for it last week. It is spectacular. So really, really excited about that. There's an Amazon production that's going to happen probably in June that chronicled what happened with what's called our Garage 56 entry at the 24 Hours of Le Mans over in France. I think that's going to be incredibly exciting. It was a very unique and fun thing, and super proud of the relationship with Goodyear, Chevy, and obviously Hendrick Motorsports, and then NASCAR, to go there and run as well as we did. Everyone involved should be very proud. I certainly was.
Yeah, and just to be able to see that as well, NASCAR going to Le Mans. I mean, Le Mans has always been is like one of the most famous races in the world, and of course, it's been featured in films, like Ford versus Ferrari, big film, and just seeing NASCAR, go back there after I think it was a 40-year window on the last time they were even there, and just seeing how well the car performed, and even not just performance on track, but just really the overall exposure that NASCAR was getting from that weekend. Just putting NASCAR in a global light, and also just having that publicity for the sport, especially with the season being being an anniversary season, happening simultaneously. It was very great, and also puts NASCAR in a much different light globally. Just with that expansion alone.
Agreed. Yeah, we were excited about it. I think that one of the cooler things, they had a pit crew challenge,
Yeah.
and the Hendrick Motorsports guys, um, well, they won their class using a floor jack versus an air jack, which is a tremendous. It's incredible, right? So, of the 60 entries, that group came in first in its class and fifth overall using a a jack that you could put on the floor and jack up the car, as opposed to an air jack, which is a tremendous disadvantage for those guys. And for them to win their classes is incredible. And they were feted and celebrated by the fans at Le Mans. They were heroes, and it's just a really cool thing. And then the car itself really, really performed well. Um, it was in a quote class by itself, which is what Garage 56 is, but it
Right.
was really against you know, I won't get into who the manufacturers are, because um, it doesn't seem like the right thing to do. But yeah, they did really, really well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Steve, everybody knows you as the president of NASCAR, but I think it would be great for the listeners to know who Steve is as a son, a father, grandfather. Like, I don't know if you have grandkids yet, but
I do not. So both my parents have passed. My dad when I was pretty young, when I was in business school, and then my mom. Um, I actually just got into NASCAR, so it's been I don't know, 17 or 18 years. I've been in NASCAR for 19 years. I have four children. I've got twins who just graduated from college, um, and then I have a son who's a sophomore in college and a daughter who is a junior in high school. So super proud of my kids. They are um, they're really you know they're great kids, all biased aside. They've got they're compassionate, and they're 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 good members of society, and I'm super proud of them and who they are as young adults. And I have my twins are just starting the workforce. My daughter works at NBC
mhm.
Sports as a in their marketing strategy group, and my son works for an agency in Tribeca called Canvas. So it's great. They're off scholarship, if you will, and it's nice to have them get into the workforce, and they're going to do great. They're just got great work ethic, and they're smart. But I'll stop bragging on my kids.
Well, I mean, keep going if you have to. I mean, they have a great role model to look up to for sure. So definitely, congratulations, to your kids finishing school and starting in the workforce. Definitely, a milestone that every parent would be very proud to see for sure. But
Well, I am. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Well, Steve, you mentioned that you were just getting into NASCAR, but going a little bit more further back, of course, I know, you being from Vermont, what was your first introduction to sports when you were growing up? Whether that was a sport that you were introduced by your parents, like your siblings, like what was the first sport that you had a love for?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's going to sound like it's a little too much to be true. I love all sports, honestly. Um, I worked at the NFL for almost 14 years, and that was my first foray into sports. I worked for Casey Wasserman for a year before coming over to NASCAR, um, almost 19 years ago. So it's been a while. Um, but my dad took me to my first NASCAR race, which was in Vermont, in Milton, Vermont, which is the town he was born called Catamount Speedway, which isn't there anymore. It's now, I don't know, kind of light industrial park or something, sadly. But I was 5 or 6 years old, and that was a great introduction. Um, Vermont, had the opportunity to go to growing up in Burlington, went to hockey games at the University of Vermont, and just, I just love sports. And when I got into business school, I decided that I wanted to work in sports. I didn't really know what that meant, particularly back in the dark ages when I was going to school. But I didn't really understand it. Just kind of this thought process of, hey, I like business and I love sports. Why not combine the two? Which is probably a fairly simplistic view of what it was. Um, but at the time, sports management, sports marketing was still fairly fledgling. They didn't have sports marketing or sports management classes in college, and it was just kind of getting off its feet. But I love sports, and I am privileged to work in sports. The beauty of working in sports is once you get in sports, it's actually pretty easy to stay in sports. The first foray into sports is the most difficult.
Oh yeah.
It's hard because there's significant demand for the jobs, um, and a limited supply, and so I think they're really trying to figure out how to make that first connection is the most difficult. I would say there are kind of the things that people think about, like working for teams or working for the league. Um, those are hard because again, it's a fairly limited number of jobs, particularly for young people and people just starting in business. That part is hard. Um, there are other jobs that I think that are kind of tangential that I think work pretty well and is much easier, like working for an agency, whether it's kind of a full service agency or a sports marketing agency. You know, the bigger the agency, the more specialized the job you're going to have. The smaller the agency, the more things you'll do, and neither is bad. Both are good. It's just getting that experience, and then once you're in, you can move, and that's the beauty. And I think for me, as I think about growth for um, young people in sports, find a good job. And if you like the company you work for and their values and what they're trying to accomplish, that's a gift. And then it's all right, well, how long am I going to stay? Stay as long as you are learning and staying as long as they'll, continue to promote you. At some point, you're going to get to a place where the value you're bringing to your organization is probably greater than what that you're getting from the organization. And that's okay. And that's probably when it's time to leave. It's okay to leave jobs. Everyone does it. It's not like, 50 years ago, you started at one company and, 40 years later you retired and they give you a watch. That's not what it is anymore. And
Right.
you have to manage your own brand and what it is you want to do with your career, because it's yours and you have to nurture it and you have to be smart about it and you have to make as many contacts as you can. That's on you. And that's an important part of, I think, how people should manage their career.
Yeah, you bring up some very valid points there, Steve. And yeah, we are in a day and age where, like in the workforce, and it's in every industry, not just in sports, where people are not being used to staying at one place for a really long time. I mean, there are outliers that do choose to stay at places for 5 plus years, 10 plus years, 20 plus years, even. And just seeing how how much variety there is out there with jobs these days, and how expansive the sports industry is starting to grow. Even just outside of what's traditional sports teams or sports leagues, now we're seeing sports media companies pop up, sports agencies, content creating companies that are involved in sports. I mean, just this whole aspect of different opportunities that are present in the sports industry. It does make it very open for people to want to move around more. And of course, being I like to say that when you're someone starting out in the sports industry, you have to have a mindset of being a nomad, because it's never a guarantee of you being in one place or starting out in the place that you want to go when you get your first job.
That's absolutely true. And I think finding that right place is different for everybody, right? So what might be right for me might not be right for you, Philip, right? In terms of kind of how, I'll contrast the NFL with NASCAR. For me, NASCAR was a better fit. As much as I love the NFL, it's a tremendous brand. Um, it was an honor and a privilege to work there, and that's a mantra that comes from Roger, and it is. It is an honor and a privilege to work for the National Football League. I went to a place at NASCAR that has more of a sense of community, and community across the entire stakeholder group. I'm not just talking about NASCAR, the company. Um, and that's good for my personality. That's a place that made me feel really comfortable. And that's why I'm still here.
Yeah, and just with you starting out with your first full time job in sports, coming off your last internship, what do you think it took for you to land that first full time starting out?
Well, I think so. It was at the NFL, and I started as a manager uh, at the NFL within their corporate marketing group, and which is a group ultimately I oversaw before I left there. It was they were looking for someone like me, someone that had a brand background, that would understand brand and could speak the same language to the brands they were trying to bring in as sponsors. Um, and I just happened to, have a good fit with the hiring director. And, I interviewed, and a week later I had the job. So I was kind of the last person in the door that they were interviewing. So I felt fortunate. Um, but it was really the brand background that got me that job. And and then I was in sports, right, which is where I wanted to be. And the best advice I got was when I was in business school was from a family friend, and he said, you don't have to start in sports. Go get some transferable skills,
Hmm.
and then they will want you. And it was prophetic. He was exactly right. So I worked for 3 years before the opportunity at the NFL, and and now I've been in sports for, well, longer than I'd like to say. Makes me old.
Yeah. Well, you have a lot of time in for sure. We'll just put it that way. Seasons. Yeah, you've seen a lot of seasons. We'll just put it that way. Well, Steve, with you being at the NFL and where the NFL is at today, it's one of the most watched sports leagues in the world. I mean, globally, you've gone to London. They're having games in Mexico City. I think even next year, like they announced that they're going to Brazil for the first time. And when you worked at the NFL, what was something that you did that helped contribute to the innovation of the league to where it is today?
Um, well, be pretty self-effacing. Probably not much, honestly. Um, the league it is a juggernaut. I mean, it's just massive. Um, I think under Rogers' direction, they've really done a lot more innovating, and you can't argue with their success at all. And there are things that we will emulate in our own way. So I think for us, we had our first street race ever. Do I think we'll race internationally? Maybe starting as early as 25. I do. And I think there are lots of opportunities there for us as a sport. And it's not copying them. I'd look at it more, kind of, if you think about what F1 has done here coming to this country with 3 races now,
Right.
Miami, Coda, and then the race that they had in Las Vegas. I wouldn't be surprised if we started to, go places where they've been, right, or where they are. Um, and I think that's good because it just exposes our brand to a more global audience. And I think our form of racing is the best form of racing in the world, and the most competitive, which is why I think, Shane Van Gisbergen, who won the Chicago Street Race, why he's coming to NASCAR next year, because there are opportunities for him to shine in what is, I think, the best series in the world. Um, Super biased, but excited by the level of competition and what we're doing and the schedule variation. Um, a new car that debuted last year, our next gen car that is just having just amazing results on the racetrack, and
Hmm.
um, a young driver corps that is just now, you know, catching its stride. That I think there's significant growth that will happen in the sport for for a decade or more.
Right, right, and even just with the international footprint that NASCAR has made, you've really started from the ground floor. Bringing in international drivers like Shane Van Gisbergen, he's coming to NASCAR next season. Daniel Suarez, he's made an impact internationally, and yeah, it's just been so great to see that this much talent, this much international representation come into the sport. Even though historically it's always been like that, we've always had international drivers come and race over in NASCAR. Either if they were an IndyCar transplant or a Formula One transplant, they've made an impact on the sport in some way. And just seeing where other North American sports leagues are doing now with having international representation, with either not just from the player side but from just the game presentation side, going overseas, going, north of the border, south of the border to have games. And, hopefully, NASCAR can have that same wavelength of international representation pretty soon, like as you mentioned. And I feel like it will get there because, just with how well the sport has performed from the viewerships and just the global expansion these past couple of years, even with the next gen car, the product has become more available and just more impactful, that it can reach millions of people and expand beyond the horizons. And even the impact that the sport has had with the international series, with the NASCAR Euro Series, as well as the new NASCAR Brazil sprint race, the series down in Brazil. You know, there's already a footprint internationally for the sport.
No, I agree. I think there are other countries we're talking to as well. It started in Canada, then we moved to Mexico, then the Europe Series. The latest is Brazil. There are three or four other countries that are interested in having, kind of that grassroots footprint of NASCAR. And I think there's some things that we can do that kind of brings them all together, and then, ultimately have an opportunity for them to compete against each other as well. But to your point, like a Daniel Suarez, who started in the Mexico series, didn't speak any English when he moved to this country. And he has been, he's a winner, in our top series. And he was our Xfinity series, which is our second series, champion several years ago. He's a real talent and an amazing race car driver and an even better human being.
Absolutely, absolutely. I remember. Well, actually, it was the first time that we actually met in person, and I get a kick out of it when I tell the story. But when I interned at Sonoma last summer, and it was actually when Daniel Suarez won his first Cup race, and just knowing that was my home track and just seeing the celebration that he had, of course, with Sonoma being California, which is a huge Mexican population. Just how big his fan base, like Daniel's Amigos, how big of a turnout they had just that weekend. And I remember you and me, we were in Victory Lane after he won, and and just you said jokingly, at the time when Joe Gregory, when she was the track president at Sonoma Raceway, that like you would trade places with her just for her to become president of NASCAR. And I mean, yeah, I mean, and I'm sure like things would probably be great, even like switch or no switch. But I always got a kick out of that, and it just also showed how much leadership and how much appreciation you have for people that work around the sport.
Yeah, it was, that was a special day. Daniel and I have a very, very strong relationship, and Um, that was that. It was an emotional day for Daniel, and it was for me too. I was knowing how hard he worked and knowing about his journey made that win just that much more special.
Absolutely. So, Steve, just from when we had that one on one when I was in Daytona this summer, what really stood out to me is that, just with like you think about the leaders that work in the sports industry, at commissioner level, like you're at a commissioner level when it comes to other leagues like the NFL, MLB, NHL, and the NBA, and just seeing how you carry yourself in a position of power, and you being at the racetracks and talking with the fans, talking with the drivers, the teams, and all the track personnel that are on the ground every weekend, and becoming the president of NASCAR. What steps did you take to get to that level, and how have you made yourself different from what other leaders in sports are doing?
Um, well, I think for me, the day I started my first full-time job, I worked for a company called American Home Products in New York City when I got out of business school. And I made a promise to myself that I would outwork everybody. And so I have a very strong work ethic. I think it's really important to have that. Um, I you have to, for me, and everyone's different, right? Everyone's got their own style. Everyone's got their own leadership, both abilities and kind of how they conduct themselves. I try to be as true to myself as I can be and try to be authentic in whatever I'm doing. So I think it's important to spend time with the race fans. I think it's important to spend times with the drivers and listen to what they have to say. And, um, it's just, I, I don't, I was, you have to be lucky as well. And so I was fortunate that certain things happened, from a timing perspective, but you also have to make that luck too, right? And that gets back to the hard work and the preparation. You need to be, you know, have above average intelligence in order to make it work as well, right? So um, I think people would say, "Hey, Steve's a nice guy." Being a nice guy isn't going to cut it. You have to work hard. You have to have vision. You have to be able to craft a strategy and then execute against it. If you don't, you won't make it, to where I've made it to. Um, and it's not for everyone. It just isn't. It is not because the number of places kind of at the top are limited. It's not for everyone because they don't want to do it. It's there are a ton of sacrifices that I have made, um, and I'm sure the same sacrifices that Don Garber and Roger Goodell, Adam Silver, Rob Manfred, that they've made as well. Different sacrifices with different circumstances, but it is it is not an easy road, and it's not for everybody. So it was for me. I'm super blessed and thankful. Grateful to the France family that they've entrusted me to run their sport, and act as a leader in their sport. Our sport's a little bit different than other sports because, the reason why I'm a president, not a commissioner, is because we're a kind of a disparate league, and
Hmm.
we don't own ourselves like stick and ball sports do, which is why there are commissioners that serve in those roles. Um, we are, the teams are independent, the drivers are independent. We own a number of racetracks. About half the racetracks we race at, we own, but the other half we don't. And so it's getting alignment on how this sport needs to grow. That is the single most important part of my job. It's articulating the vision and then get people to follow it. And that's not easy because, self-interest is a very motivating factor. And, if someone is quote winning over here, in some cases it is a zero sum game because, hey, that doesn't work for me. And you have to convince them that, hey, maybe it doesn't work for you in the short term, but it will work for you in the long term. And so there needs to be a significant level of trust that is there. And that's what I try to do. Whether I'm successful or not is a work in progress for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Steve, when what really stood out to me was how open you were as a leader. I think with just how the sports industry could be at some times. There's like closed doors, things like that. But for you, like for how much you're willing to listen to the fans, listen to the drivers, listen to the teams, and have their opinion be present. I think it shows a lot to like there's not like a closed door policy in any way within NASCAR, and I think it's just all about trying to make the product better, off the track, on the track, or really just in between as well. And I think when young leaders can see that as they're going through the phases of moving up the ranks, or having a manager role, or they're finding their way into a VP or a president role, then they'll understand that, yeah, people's opinions do matter, whether that's in office or out of office.
Yeah, I think that one thing I would say, Philip, that I think is important, people need to put themselves out there, and they need to be willing to fail, because that's how you learn. And I know that sounds super cliche, but it's true. Like, we want people that work for us to innovate and challenge the status quo at every level, because then and only then will you get the best out of whatever functional area that someone's working in. And they need to be great teammates. And I know that also sounds super cliche, but it's true. A team that works together is going to be far more effective and efficient in what it is in what they're doing. So I would just don't strive for perfection. Um, be willing to put yourself out there and be willing to fail, because if you are and you learn from it, I think it's going to allow significantly more growth.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Steve, as we all know, NASCAR turned 75 years old in 2023. And, just so much has changed throughout the sports. I mean, Daytona, like in Daytona, for example, where the sport was founded, we're racing on the beach. And then, like 10 years later, we're racing on super speedways. And then just through the whole time span, racing at different tracks all over the country, even having a few trips overseas as well, not to mention. And just seeing the different drivers, the different teams, and the different rules that have come into place, you know throughout the years in the 75-year window. In the 75 years that the sanctioning body has been around, what is something that you love about the modern era of the sport, and something that you miss about the previous era?
So I would say on the modern side, because at the heart, I'm just a fan. Um, so I would say that the level of competition today arguably is the best it's ever been. And I'm super proud of that, because our engineers and our people that have worked with the race teams and the race teams engineers and our OEM partners and Goodyear, our tire partner, everyone has come together to create phenomenal racing. 19 different winners last year, 15 different winners this year. I think we'll see a similar number, in the coming years as well. I'm super proud of that. You know, I, the I, to me, I would have. It's more of a kind of a time travel thing. I would have loved to go back and seen some of the like one of the things I absolutely would have loved to have seen was racing on the beach here in Daytona. That just would have been fantastic to me, and seeing kind of that first generation of NASCAR racers, um, just a really cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, I always get a kick out of going on YouTube or something and trying to find like those old vintage videos of what the cars look like, and just seeing them race on the beach, and even just also seeing the different style of racing, like from previous years to nowadays, and just seeing, like I guess to give an example, like if I watch like an old video of the Daytona 500, say from like 1975 or like the 79 race, I can just see how different the cars were moving. Like when they go around the bank, I see them slightly go up the track, but when I watched the Daytona 500 in the modern era, I could see the car just holding the line all the way throughout the banking, and just even getting a kick out of that, just seeing how far the sport has come from the engineering perspective, from the business perspective, especially with NASCAR being such a sponsor-driven sport. Like how many different partners have come and gone, or even some that have came back into NASCAR, just trying to make an impact and trying to gravitate to the new demographic of fans, and just fans that have been fans for a long time, like passing the tradition down to their kids, having them go to the races, having them learn about their favorite drivers, their favorite teams, and their greatest moment that's happened over in the sport. I mean, just so much that has happened with this year. What I really liked. I think it was the Darlington race. It was Mother's Day weekend. It was Throwback weekend when all the old legends they came out, and just seeing like all the teams like present a different paint scheme from the drivers from the past, just carrying on their legacy and showing appreciation for the mark that they made on the sport. I mean, just seeing things like that is something that I always get a kick out of, and also something that I can attest to you for the efforts that you and your team has made to bring NASCAR into that light and to promote it to the new generation of fans.
Yeah, I think to your point there, Philip, first of all, you answered your question better than I did, but um, I think we've worked really hard to get um, a younger and more diverse fan base. Um, but we've also worked hard to get a younger and more diverse ownership base, and a younger and more diverse participant or driver or crew chief base. And all of those things are working. Maybe not to the degree that I would like them to, um, but the journey has started. And I think it's, the path forward is really important for us. And I'm excited about that. That to me is one of the single most important, I'll call them metrics that we have, which is looking at a fan base that's getting younger and more diverse. And I hear people talk about, hey, well, this is our sport and we don't want to share it with someone else. Um, the people that are saying that are a very, very small minority of fans, because NASCAR fans pride themselves on being welcoming and inclusive at the racetrack, right? So if you're camping and you're camping next to someone, it's like, hey, let me figure out, hey, what it is that we can help you with, right? Here's a hot dog, here's a beer. Who's your favorite driver? Okay, well, that's not a good favorite driver. This is why you should move for my favorite driver. I remember, which is not the best memory I've ever had, but I did a show called Undercover Boss quite a few years ago now, and I was staying in a motor coach, and I wasn't there because I was filming, and the guy was in the spot next to me, did all my hookups for me. So when I got there, it was all done. I'm like, who does that, right? Um, it's just that's what NASCAR fans are about. This individual didn't know me, didn't know where I worked, never met me, and he's helping me with water and electricity. Okay, that's what NASCAR fans about, and I'm super proud to be part of this community.
Yeah, you definitely bring up a great point there, because there's just so many things that are so unique about NASCAR from the fan perspective, and even just from the racing experience. Because going to the tracks all over the country, I like to say that NASCAR never has a home game, because there are any home games for us. It's not like a traditional sport where you drive to the stadium or the arena and you're playing a team coming from a different city. I mean, NASCAR travels 38 weeks out the year different cities, different states, and every fan or every environment or every racetrack is so unique because there's a different demographic of fans coming to the races, and also just different personalities, and even being in the infield where all the campers are. I mean, in what other sport do you find people camping for 4 days on a weekend, and just like watching cars go around the track? I mean, you can't find that anywhere else. And I just think, with how much the sport has come, especially carrying on those traditions of having campers, having like races in different towns and different states every weekend. I mean, there's just so much expansion that can, and the possibilities of where the sport can go, like when it continues to progress.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, Philip. If you think about just the tracks themselves, we race on half-mile short tracks, um, banked, unbanked, you know, 2.6 mile high banked ovals, road courses, now street courses. We raced on dirt this year at Bristol. We raced on concrete at Bristol. I mean, all these different places. No other motorsports racing series on the planet has the type of variation that we have. And then you have some places where, camping is a massive thing, right? Like Talladega or Daytona. And other places, it's not, right? Chicago street race, not a lot of camping there. Other cool things about that event for sure. It's just, again, I think that most of that comes from listening to the fans. What do the fans want? And, camping during COVID and coming back from COVID, one of the things that the fans really wanted to do was to get out. And NASCAR is a good opportunity to do that. You're in your motorhome or whatever, your fifth wheel or your tent or whatever it is, and you are, you could isolate with the people that were part of your family, and then as things kind of opened up, then you start the party again, and it's just a cool thing. And I think it's your point, 4 or 5 days of camping, versus a 4 or 5 hours of tailgating. It's a different animal, right? Completely. Again, not disparaging other sports. Ours is unique to us. And we certainly lean into that.
Absolutely. And Steve, NASCAR just signed a new media rights deal set to begin in 2025. Not just for the Cup Series, but also as well as for the Xfinity Series. The Cup Series, you're bringing back TNT. Of course, TNT has made major marks in trying to expand their sports product, and of course, you renewed your relationship with Fox and NBC, and also a milestone of getting Amazon Prime a part of the deal as well. So, and of course, with the Xfinity Series, bringing in the CW, just to have it be like NASCAR races for Xfinity Series being broadcasted on cable television, all in every household across the country. Like, how do you think this new deal will help with the reputability of the sport and the way that fans will watch races?
I think having an opportunity for us to have fully distributed or a full broadcast slate with the Xfinity Series, broadcast in the Cup Series, cable in the Cup Series, a cable plus a streamer with, TNT, True TV, and Max, with a simulcast there, and then a pure streamer in Amazon Prime. We think it gives the fans the best opportunity to find NASCAR. What we have seen with the streamers in other sports, like the NFL, I think the average age of those that are watching the game is 7 or 8 years younger. Okay, that works for us. We want to be in different places where the fans are, existing fans, and where potential new fans are going to be. And we think this gives us the best opportunity. The other thing is that they have all made a commitment to each other that they're going to promote each other's platforms. We think that's massive, because, hey, if I'm my major go-to is Amazon Prime, and they're talking about Fox and races on Fox and FS1, that's a good thing. And, the folks at Amazon, them promoting what's going to happen with Turner and Max, and then both of them promoting, NBC and USA. It's just we think it's a win, and it also hedges our bet, honestly, because it's still unsure what's going to happen in the cable universe. So, we're trying to put a marker down on different places, and I think it's going to be incredibly successful for the sport.
And just with the presentation of it all as well. I mean, seeing NASCAR now going on the streaming side, and especially with other leagues already getting the head start on streaming. With the NFL having Amazon Prime with Thursday Night Football, and MLB having a streaming deal with Apple TV for Friday Night Baseball. It's just so great to see NASCAR going into that route where they can help get those numbers for the younger demographic. Just knowing, and I guess just to kind of talk a little bit about myself here, Steve. I'm somebody that doesn't really sit in front of the TV as much as they used to anymore. Just more of just watching things on my laptop and streaming Netflix or HBO or Disney Plus or anything like that, but still watching sports, of course. But just seeing NASCAR now go into that light now with the streaming, and of course branching out to other bigger national networks, it's definitely great and evolutionary for the way that people are going to watch races.
Yeah, I think one of the things, if you go on Bleacher Report or House of Highlights, almost no NASCAR, right? But starting in 24, not 25, starting in 24, they're fully in on NASCAR, and yeah, that's important, right? Like my 23-year-old son Jack, that's where he gets a lot of his sports,
Right.
and
Right.
he wants to watch NASCAR, right, and hear what's happening in NASCAR. Now he watches a fair amount of NASCAR because the whole father-son thing and growing up in the sport, but that's important because that's what his buddies are how they're consuming sports, and we need to do that. And so I'm really excited about the variation that's happening. I think it says a lot about where the sport is today, Philip, where you bring back your incumbents, and then you have three other, massive media companies that want to do business with you and want to show your races. I think that's a testament to where the sport is today.
Absolutely. And just even the social media side, yeah, it would definitely be great to see NASCAR on Bleacher Report, House of Highlights. I mean, when I was in school, it was kind of hard for me to have conversations with people about NASCAR because, just the presence, or lack of presence that there was for social media just wasn't there at the time. But, nowadays, now I can have conversations with people of NASCAR with my friends because, it's now starting to branch out on bigger social media platforms and starting to get more, like publicity and that way. And, and that's really how it starts too. Is where, you get the snowball effect of growing the sport, just having things go viral, having, videos be present on different platforms. And I know when we think about other, racing leagues, Formula One, they've always, done this, or, they've had, this viral content become present these days. But with NASCAR now coming into the fold, now we're starting to see, okay, now, people are going to be more aware about it. People are going to be more in tune of updates happening across the sport. And yeah, just continuing to keep the ball rolling and continuing to innovate in that way for sure.
Agreed.
So Steve, just knowing that mentorship is an important part of career development, over the years, who do you consider to be a mentor that helped you get your foot in the door in the sports industry?
It's really odd. I think mentorship is incredibly important um, for career development, whether it's in sports or somewhere else. I, you know, I I really didn't have one, which is highly unusual. To have someone as a mentor and a guide, um, and can point you in the right direction. I don't know why I didn't, um, but I didn't. And so I've had this question before, and I'm very honest about the answer because, you know, I can't make up a fictitious person that was there to guide me and be a mentor. but I am very, very, I think it's a very, very important uh, thing to have. Mentorship is, um, it allows for, um, and I think it's an obligation that we have. So for me, I mentor a number of different younger people that work for us because, I think there's something that I can add to their development, and that's really what it's about. It's not meant to be, you know, me having a mentor and it's a leg up for whoever that you know young man or woman is. That's not really what it's about. It's just, hey, I've been there. You can learn from my mistakes and someone to bounce ideas off of, and give advice to. I think it's really important, and I like doing it. Right? It's kind of like going to speak to colleges. It's just something I enjoy because always the questions are always fantastic. The students are well prepared. It gives me joy to give something back, a little something anyway. Hopefully, you know, having people think differently about our sport or sports in general, and I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, and this is always a question that I ask for people that come on the show, just because I feel like with my journey working in sports, mentors of mine have helped me like in every instance when it came to trying to connect with people, trying to help write a cover letter for a job application, or even helping revise my resume, or even just making an introduction, writing a letter of recommendation. I think with just my generation, it's great that we can have people like yourself, as well as our professors, if for those that are still in school, or people are within our community that we can reach out to with many years of experience. It's just having that guidance from someone that is had the experience and has had or that can give off the knowledge to someone like myself. It's good that we can be able to still have people like that around these days, because there's a saying that I like where and I kind of made it myself, where you kind of have to learn from a master to become a master. And and just knowing that mentorship is very important, and just development, not just in sports but really in every industry. I'd suggest that everybody, if you don't have a mentor right now, you have to go out and find one. Like, just find a good one too. Like anybody, can say that they could be a mentor of you, but I think genuine mentorship really comes in the forms of someone that's willing to take you to the next level.
I agree with you.
Yeah, and just an understanding the competitive nature of sports industry jobs. There's so many people that are trying to apply for a job in the sports industry, whether that's someone that's coming out of school, somebody that's trying to make a career transition. What would you say are some of the current challenges for someone that wants to work in the sports industry right now?
It's as I said before. I think it's really hard, and I think I looked at my own son, who was graduated with from a very good university with a business degree and some great internships. He had over 300 interviews before he got his job.
Wow.
It's hard, and it's not in sports, but that's okay. He does want to work in sports. Getting that first job is really hard. Getting that first job in sports is even harder. So I would go with the broadest field you can. It doesn't mean you can't look at sports, but think more broadly than that. Create a functional, or find a functional area that is interesting to you, that you can then use, as I did, um, in brand management, to then get my job in sports. So, I would just be, you have to persevere. You have to work hard. You have to try to make as many contacts as you can. Um, People want to help. Um, they may not have time to help, but by and large, people want to help. because they were in the same spot themselves. And people who don't, you know, that's on them. But it's certainly something that I try to give back. I remember how hard it was. That was many, many decades ago. But it's, I don't know. I just work hard, persevere, make contacts, don't give up. If you have to broaden your field, broaden your field. But ultimately, if you want to get in sports, you can get in sports.
Oh yeah, and it's an industry for everybody. I think one of the things that I've learned is that you come across a lot of different personalities. In the sports industry, this could be people like different backgrounds, different religions, different like races and things like that, and I feel like when you look at yourself and when you go into these kind of organizations, it's really just all about trying to gravitate to being a people person, because I think that's really a number one aspect of someone that's trying to work in the sports. You have to learn to work with different people, and because everybody's going to be different, everybody's going to think differently, they're going to have different perspectives, they're going to have their own opinions, and when you begin to notice that, it makes you a more open person, and with that it also comes a lot of humility as well. I think trying to find a job in the sports industry, it really humbles you, because I think if you've lived a life where you were always told yes, I say go try to find a job in the sports industry, and I think that's a lot of that can help you get used to hearing a lot of no's, like, and just make you really understand that, wow, like life isn't as easy as I thought it was.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think a couple of words that you use there, I think that is important. I think being authentic to yourself, being empathetic, um, and sincere, those things come out. That is what is being a people person is about. And the more you have that, and the more relationships you build, the more people are going to want to help you. And that I was certainly a product of that for sure. And yeah, is it humbling? Yeah, it's very humbling, and it's frustrating and maddening. And you see someone that gets a job, you're like, how did that person get the job? And I didn't. Um, every circumstance is unique and different, and there are reasons why. But you got to keep just going. Got to persevere. You got to make it work and just keep working hard. And again, I know that sounds like just a bunch of words, but there are words I think that you can live by, and you can make it work. Because again, if you want to work in sports, there is a path for you to work in sports. Whatever that path is going to be different for everybody, but there's a path, and it will come with sacrifice. And but it's clearly there, and I think there are more jobs kind of in the broader sports world today than there have ever been, because you have more and more sports that are emerging, kind of onto the scene, in addition to those that have been around for a century or 75 years like ours.
Absolutely. And Steve, for yourself, like, what can you say has been a milestone moment for you? I mean, it seems like you've accomplished so much just with your time in the industry, from NFL to NASCAR, and what has been like that wow moment for you as a sports industry professional in your career to date?
I think for me, the proudest I've been in sports is when my two owners, Lisa Kennedy and Jim France, decided to make me the fifth president in the history of NASCAR. Um, that's pretty. That was a very humbling moment, and I think people that approach their success with humility, I think that's a good thing. Listen, there are lots of people that work in sports that are kind of masters in the universe and huge egos. You're going to have that. That's not my approach. Um, I consider my path to be fortunate, and it could have veered and deviated, and I could have gone in a different direction and not be where I am. So I never take for granted how I got here or where I am. other people don't look at it that way, and that's okay. That's their prerogative, but that's kind of what I live by.
Mm. And it's a great principle to live by as well. And just from the time that I've known you, and from the conversations that we've had, you really embody like what a true leader should look like in sports. And just how humble you are, like how open you are, and just even just having so much respect for others. I mean, it's definitely hard to come by these days. And for you to still be true to yourself, like with the position that you're in a sport like NASCAR, and even just in a position that you're in an industry like sports, it definitely just goes to show like how appreciative it is for you to be in the position you are today, and how I've always looked up to you as a model leader in the sports industry, and how everybody else can do the same as well.
Thank you, Philip. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And Steve, it's been such a great conversation that like we've had, and people that are going to listen to this and view this, they're going to be so inspired by what you have to say and just your journey, and also the advice that you could give to them to be able to progress in their career. Because the whole purpose of me doing this podcast was to help inspire the young generation to get into sports. And with the background that I've come from, like the only way that I like we've always perceived about sports to get into it was by playing it. But these days, it's great that I can be in a generation where we can promote ourselves to display what we're doing as off-field players, and also how we can help inspire the next generation to be in our shoes someday. So the last question that I wanted to close out with was, what piece of advice would you give to the OFPs that will hear from you, and what is something that you're hoping for yourself going forward?
I think it just goes back to, again, being open to, follow whatever that path is for you. My path was my path, and there are people that are going to listen to the podcast and be like, listen, I don't want to work 85, 90 hours. I just don't want to do it. That's okay. It doesn't mean you can't work in sports. We have plenty of people that work at NASCAR that don't work, 85 or 90 hours a week like I do. And, I've traveled, as we're heading into Christmas, I've traveled 51 weeks out of 51 weeks. It's a lot, right? I went to 33 race weekends. And there's no time off after you have a race weekend. You just roll into the next week. And that's what I signed up for. But that won't be for everyone. And that's okay. It's, I think, being true to what you want to do and being honest about what it is you're willing to do and what sacrifices you're willing to make in order to continue to advance within sports. And again, it doesn't mean that if someone ends up being kind of a career manager level and that makes them happy, well, they win. That's a win for them, right? If someone wants to be a VP and that's what makes them happy and they worked, super hard to get there, well, that's a win for them. It just really depends on what you want out of life. And I think the key in all of this is just to be true to yourself and be honest with yourself for what that is. For me, I'm in the final stages of my journey in sports. I don't know how long I'm going to continue to work here at NASCAR. I won't work anywhere else, I don't think. If I'm lucky enough to finish my career at NASCAR, that would make me happy. And, but there have been sacrifices, and those were things that I was willing to do. And, but, I want to get back and start to ride my road bike again, and I want to travel, and I want to spend time with my family. And, those are things that I want to do when I retire. And maybe there's an easing out. I don't know. We'll see how that whole thing works. But that's not going to be next year, and it's not going to be the year after that. So I'm not sure, what that timeline is.
Yeah, well, I mean, Steve, NASCAR is in a great place right now with you in charge, and definitely wishing for more years, in your role as well, because you're definitely, doing everything you can to make the sport better, make the sport innovative, and just continue to keep doing what you're doing. I mean, it's such a blessing just to a sport that I grew up watching, like really the first sport I was introduced to as a kid, just being in the place right now. But all thanks to you and your team and just everything that you've done to set NASCAR apart from other sports leagues and just continuing to keep doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you, Philip. And the reason why I agreed to do this podcast is because of you. And I think you have an incredibly bright future. I've told you that in person, and I'm going to say it on this podcast. What you're doing is you're doing it the right way, and it's authentic to you and your path. And I think you're going to have a tremendous career in sports, and I wish you all the best. And, as you know, if there's anything I can do to help you, you just give me a shout.
I really appreciate that, Steve, and thank you so much. I mean, and even just coming on the podcast as well. I mean, it's just so much gratitude that that I express to you just for giving me this opportunity to do it, and this this like I asked you if you had a milestone moment of you becoming president of NASCAR, like this is a milestone moment for me to have you on here, and it's definitely great for sure just to share it with you.
You're going to have many more milestones that will be better than this one. But it was my pleasure to join you. I'm, enjoyed our dialogue, um, and I always enjoy our conversation. So it was nice to be able to do it and do it on your podcast.
Absolutely. Well, Steve Phelps, OFPs, you heard it from him himself. And just thank you again for coming on. And just also thank you so much for everybody that watched to the end, listen to, Steve Phelps and his journey in becoming the president of NASCAR. Just wishing him, like a great season for next year. Hopefully, NASCAR can top, the 75th anniversary season that they had. And I'm sure, they're going to do it in the right way. So definitely make sure to stay tuned for the upcoming NASCAR season for sure. And as always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share if you watch the video version of this on YouTube. If you listen to the audio version, either on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, or Radio Public, make sure to leave 5 stars, follow the audio version, and also be on the lookout for up and coming episodes. Well, that's going to wrap it up for me. Thank you so much again to Steve Phelps for coming on the Off-Field Players podcast. Again, it's a milestone episode and great way to close out 2023. Want to wish everybody a happy holidays, happy New Year, and looking forward to big moments coming in 2024 with the podcast, as well as also with great things that are going to continue to happen across the sports industry. But yeah, just thank you so much for everybody tuning in. Have a safe holiday break for those that are on break from school. Happy holidays. Stay safe, stay motivated, continue to stay blessed. And as always, make sure to achieve what you believe.